today's lecture we'll see that verification, we have already seen in the past lecture that verification is easier than finding the solution. So given the problem like the Ham cycle problem, Hamiltonian cycle, it is not so easy to determine given a graph whether it is Hamiltonian or not. But given the graph and the Hamiltonian circuit for that, it is easy to verify that that is a Hamiltonian circuit for that graph. So verification is easier than the finding the solution. So we will formalize this notion a little bit more now in terms of language again. So we say, so this is the verification. We say that a string y, which is for 0, 1 star, is a certificate. So this certificate actually means it is the string, like for Hamiltonian circuit this will be nothing but a Hamiltonian cycle. So this is a certificate. Now we say an algorithm A verifies the string X, which is also coming from 0, 1 star, if there exists a certificate Y such that AXY is equal to 1. So basically this means in terms of the Hamiltonian circuit, if you go back, then this X will stands for only those encodings of the graph for which the graph is Hamiltonian, because for those strings you will find a Hamiltonian circuit which is Y. So this A verifies X if there exists a Y such that AXY, for which X A can verify. For the Hamiltonian circuit problem, this X will signify the encoding of those graphs which are Hamiltonian, because those graphs will have a certificate, will have a Hamiltonian circuit which can be verified that it is a Hamiltonian circuit for the graph. Okay, and A, now we are talking in terms of the algorithm. We say the algorithm A will verify the string X if it can find, if there exists a Y such that it can verify that Y is, in terms of Hamiltonian circuit problem, is a Hamiltonian circuit in the graph represented by X. So that's what it means. So let me write down now the language verified by A is the set L. So what are those strings? So definitely from this definition it will follow the language verified by A. Basically L is the set of all those strings X such that A verifies X. So what does it mean? Again, let me take that example of Hamiltonian circuit problem. For this one, what is your L? Basically those strings which represent the Hamiltonian graphs. Because for those graphs there exists an algorithm which can verify that string X. So this is L. Now let us see, with this definition of verification we can now define a new class of problems which are called NP class, or non-deterministically polynomial. P stands for polynomial, NP stands for non-deterministically polynomial. People often do mistake that some people say it is non-polynomial. No, N does not stand for non-polynomial. If P is polynomial, this stands for non-deterministically polynomial. So now I am going to define this class NP. So NP is the set of problems. It's a class of problems. How? Problems we know are represented by language are those languages such that L can be verified by an algorithm, but that algorithm should be polynomial. by a polynomial time. This is a very crucial concept. The NP is the set of all those problems for which verification can be done in polynomial time. So Hamiltonian cycle problem again, it can be verified in polynomial time. I already told you in the last class how to verify whether given a cycle is a Hamiltonian cycle in the graph or not. And that can be done in polynomial time. So that problem according to this definition belongs to NP. So what does it mean? Why is it called non-deterministically polynomial? It is because of this. If there exists a polynomial time algorithm for verification, then for the given problem like the Hamiltonian cycle problem again, you can assume there is a non-deterministic machine which can generate all possible Hamiltonian circuits, all possible circuits simultaneously in parallelism. So it can, suppose it is generating all the cycles simultaneously, and each component of the machine is verifying each circuit simultaneously, again non-deterministically. That is the non-determinism. And since we are saying if it is a Hamiltonian graph, then the verification can be done in polynomial time. Non-deterministically, at least one component will say within polynomial time whether the graph is Hamiltonian or not. So the situation graphically is like this. So suppose we have this machine. So there are infinite number of components of the machine. Each is verifying a circuit within the given graph, whether it is the Hamiltonian circuit or not. And since we know this verification is polynomial, at least if the graph is Hamiltonian, at least one of the machine will say within polynomial time that the graph is Hamiltonian, because it can verify each circuit whether it is polynomial or not. Okay, so that means the Hamiltonian circuit problem is polynomial time solvable, but in a non-deterministic manner, not with a single processor or deterministic manner, that the way we know the computation is. So this is the non-determinism here. This should be very clear to you to understand this class, that you can solve these problems in the non-deterministic polynomial class in a non-deterministic manner, but in polynomial time. But we are not saying anything whether this problem can be solved in polynomial time. Don't get confused about that. We are only saying it can be solved in a non-deterministic manner polynomial time. So this is the class NP. Now when we say polynomial time algorithm, I have to be a little bit precise. What do we mean by polynomial? Polynomial in terms of what? Because we say always polynomial in terms of n is the input size. What is the input size here? Here I am just making it precise. So when we say polynomial, that means for this it is necessary, for this means the polynomial time algorithm, it is necessary that for x belonging to L there exists a y where the certificate y must have a length which is polynomial in terms of x. So y is order x, length of x to the power c for some constant c. You cannot, the certificate cannot be very arbitrary length. It has to be polynomial in terms of x, because x is your input size. So if y is already not polynomial in terms of x, your algorithm cannot be also polynomial in terms of x. So this is one condition, so that AXY, the polynomial time algorithm, and A runs in polynomial time. Then we say that there exists the algorithm A which can verify x in polynomial time if these two conditions are satisfied. This is the precise notion of when the algorithm can be said that it runs in polynomial time with respect to the input size x. Now notice, with this definition of NP, it is almost immediate to claim this. The claim is P is a subset of the class NP. P is a subset of the class NP. Why is that so? We already know P can be solved deterministically in polynomial time. So how can we say that P belongs to NP? Given an algorithm, deterministic algorithm A for to solve a problem in P, I can always have a non-deterministic algorithm to solve the problem in non-deterministic manner. It's very easy because the algorithm A itself, which is solving the problem in deterministic manner, in a sense it is also solving the problem in non-deterministic manner. Here only one of the machine is working, because non-determinism is more powerful than the determinism. So that's why this class P belongs to NP. Or formally what we can say, suppose there is an algorithm A which solves for P. Suppose the algorithm A solves the problem, say P belongs to P, solves a problem P in P. What we can do, we can say I have an algorithm A prime which takes X and a certificate Y, because I need to know that there exists a polynomial time algorithm A prime which will solve the problem P. P is basically is actually encoded by X here. So A prime XY given the certificate, what it will do, it will ignore Y and run basically A of X, and that's it. That is the algorithm for A prime, and we know this runs in polynomial time, so A prime also runs in polynomial time. So A prime is verifying X also in polynomial time. That means there exists an algorithm which you can verify the problem P, and that means it belongs to NP, and that's why P is a subset of NP. Now let us define another class like this. We say co-NP, complement of NP. Co-NP is basically complement of NP, and the name suggests it is the set of all problems or all language such that where the complement belongs to NP we know. So if the complement of L belongs to NP, then the problem of the language belongs to co-NP. So let us see, in terms of Hamiltonian cycle, we know Ham cycle problem belongs to NP. Already I have told you why. So it means all the graphs which are non-Hamiltonian, that they will be signified by L bar. So since L bar will be your NP, L bar will be your Ham cycle problem because it belongs to NP. L will be in that case encoding of all those graphs which are not Hamiltonian. So that means given a graph, whether it is not Hamiltonian or not, that is all that belongs to the class co-NP. Given a graph, determine it is not Hamiltonian, then that language will be in co-NP. Okay, so it is the complement of NP class. Now we already know that you can verify this very easily. If an language belongs to P, then we know L bar also belongs to P, because if L can be solved in polynomial time, then we know L can be decided in polynomial time. So then L bar will also belong to polynomial time, because what is L bar? For those strings where it is saying no, those are the strings which are constituting L bar. But to recognize those strings also we can run the same algorithm. Only just reverse your yes and no, switch your yes and no. That will give you the algorithm for recognizing L bar in polynomial time. So if L belongs to P, we know that L bar also belongs to P. And I know if L belongs to P by this property, L also belongs to NP. So what does it mean? L bar belongs to co-NP. So this suggests that NP and co-NP at least is not disjoint. At least the class P is in the intersection of NP and co-NP because of this property and this property. So let us see what can be the situations. There are 4 possibilities now about the class of problems. Either this is the situation where class P is equal to NP is equal to co-NP. This can be one situation. Everything is same. The entire class, all classes are same. Or the second is NP and co-NP are same, but P is actually a subset of this. Then P is not same as NP. This can be a situation. Or the situation can be NP is here, co-NP is here, and P is basically the intersection of NP and co-NP. This can be a situation. Or there is another situation. So NP is here, co-NP is here, there is a common intersection, and P is a subset of this intersection, not the entire intersection. So these are the four possibilities of the classes of problems. And among these four, which one is correct, nobody knows. So this is not known among those four possibilities which one is correct. This is an open problem till today. There is no idea about this configuration. All right. So this is the classes of problems. So at least we know three classes, NP, P, and co-NP. Now, let us see how we can show that if a problem can be solved in polynomial time, then another problem also can be solved in polynomial time. So this is some sort of reduction. Without this, we don't have any tool to say that some problem is very hard. So what is our goal is to show that if the problem say P2 can be solved in polynomial time, then the problem P1 also can be solved in polynomial time. So what does it mean? Which one is harder? At least as hard as which one? If this can be shown, then P2 is at least as hard as P1. Right? Because if you can solve P2, you are saying that you can solve P1. So P2 is at least as hard as P1. So that will be our next topic, reducible. So this is called the reducibility, reducing one problem to the other. So here the idea is to transform an instance of a problem to an instance of the other problem. So what we will do, suppose we are trying to reduce P1 to P2. So when we say reduce P1 to P2, it means we are trying to show if P2 can be solved in polynomial time, then P1 also can be solved in polynomial time. So this direction is very important. People do often get confused with this direction. Which one is getting reduced to which one? So if we are saying that P1 is going to be reduced to P2, what we will try to do is take an instance of P1 and we will map that instance to an instance of P2. And we will show that if that instance, that mapped instance of P2 can be solved in polynomial time, then the instance which have been mapped from P1 also can be solved in polynomial time. So this will be our strategy. So let me put down in formally. So formally this means we define L1 is polynomial time reducible, polynomial time reducible to L2. So we are saying L1 can be reduced to L2 in polynomial time if, or we denote this thing as L1 less than equal to with a polynomial P L2. So this is the notation. It means that L1 can be reduced to L2 in polynomial time. It means that this wording I am just denoting it with this fact, with this notation. L1 is polynomial time reducible to L2 if, this is the definition now, if there is a polynomial time transformation or a computable function. If there is a polynomial time computable function f, and this function takes what? It takes a string from 0 1 star to a string in 0 1 stars, because it will be mapping one instance to the other instance. One instance of the problem L1 to an instance of the problem denoted by L2. So this takes one string to another string. So this f is a function, but basically it means it is a transformation. And that what do we mean by computable function in polynomial time? It means that transformation can be carried out in polynomial time. It means that. Okay. So if so that there is another condition now. So that for all x in 0 1 star, we have the following. If x belongs to L1, if and only if, this is very important, if and only if fx belongs to L2. I told you that this is the transformation we are trying to get. So what does it mean? Let us see. What does this mean? We have taken x belongs to L1 means this is an instance of the problem denoted by L1 for which the answer is yes. Because that's the way we form the language L1 for that problem. If you remember, if you go back, that's the way we have formed the language L1. L1 consists of all those strings for which the answer is yes. Okay, so if x belongs to L1, what does it mean? It means it denotes an instance of the problem denoted by L1 for which the answer is yes. So what we are saying, if x belongs to L1, you take an instance of L1, transform it using a polynomial time algorithm. F basically a polynomial time transformation to an instance of L2, such that that instance also give an yes answer for that problem, and it is in both direction. If an instance of L2 gives an yes answer, then its inverse instance in L1 must also give the yes answer, because this is an if and only if condition. So what, by an example, suppose we have taken, so L1 is your say Hamiltonian cycle problem. Suppose this is a Hamiltonian cycle problem. L2 is say, I don't know, this is just an arbitrary, don't quote me later that this is the actual reducibility. No, Hamiltonian circuit cannot be reduced to sorting. Just for example, I'm just taking this. Okay, what does it mean? Suppose we are reducing this to this. What does it mean? It means what you have done, you have taken a graph G here, an instance, Hamiltonian graph G you have taken an instance, and mapped the graph to a problem of sorting here, an instance. And what it is, first of all, this should be computable in, this transformation should be done in polynomial time. Then it is saying if G is Hamiltonian, then its corresponding transformation here, sorry, I cannot take the problem of sorting here because I have to take whether it is a decision problem. So let's say whether some sequence is sorted or not. That's the decision problem. Okay. So suppose I have taken the instance G here which is Hamiltonian, its mapped version here must be sorted then, because this is an yes answer you have taken here. So that its instance should be mapped in this problem which must be sorted then. And if you take a graph which is not Hamiltonian, then its mapped version here should not be sorted. So that's why this if and only if. Okay, so that is the reduction now. Now, if that is the reduction, here is the here now we can say more about it. If this reduction has been done, suppose one instance of this problem, this mad version, suppose this problem can be solved in polynomial time. Suppose. Can't you solve this problem in polynomial time now? What we can do now to solve this problem in polynomial time, we take any instance first, transform in polynomial time to an instance here. We know there exists a polynomial time algorithm for this problem. Run that algorithm on that transformed version. If that is yes, we know the original one was also yes. So that's the entire goal. So this, if this problem can be solved in polynomial time, because of this reduction property, we know that this problem also can be solved in polynomial time. So let me write down this now formally again. So this is the claim. Claim is, suppose L1 and L2 are two languages in 0, 1 star, so that L1 is polynomial time reducible to L2. What do we mean by this? I already told you. Then the claim is, if L2 belongs to P, then L1 also belongs to P. If L2 belongs to polynomial time class, then L1 also belongs to polynomial class. And why? The proof is this diagram. I just give you the diagram. Diagram is, what you do for L1, you take the computable function f, transform the instance, so fi, which will be in L2. Then you run your algorithm A2 for the, which is polynomial time, and you get the answer 0, 1. So what is the algorithm for L1? This entire. So this is your A1 algorithm. The algorithm A1 for L1 is, you first compute f for the instance I, then run A2 on fi. Whatever answer is there, that should be the answer for I, because of your polynomial time reduction. Okay, mind that. So this is, again, note, underline this forever, because this is a very common mistake all the time people do. Even if one has gone under this course, this direction of reduction is people are confused all the time, I have seen. You can only say if L2 is polynomial time solvable, then L1 is solvable, not the other way. You cannot say that. So this direction is one directional, not both directional. By this property, you cannot say if L1 can be solved in polynomial time, L2 also can be solved in polynomial time. No, that is not true. This logic does not work. You should think over it. So that by reduction we mean exactly this direction should be in your mind properly. If we can only say if the problem in L2 can be solved in polynomial time, then N1 can be solved in polynomial time. So this direction is very important. Okay, so this is the polynomial time reducibility. Now we have prepared all the tools now for reduction, non-determinism, everything. What we need to show, basically our goal ultimately will be this. We'll try to identify a problem inside the class NP such that if that problem can be solved in polynomial time, then the entire class NP can be solved in polynomial time. So that is our ultimate goal to show. So let me repeat again. We are trying to find a problem in the class NP. If that problem can be solved in polynomial time, then all problems in the class NP can be solved in polynomial time. To show this, what do you have to show? That all the problems in NP can be polynomial time reducible to this particular problem. Then we will be done by our definitions so far, whatever we have developed. and that there exists such a problem which is called the satisfiability problem. Actually, there are many such problems, but at least we need to start with one problem. Then what we will do, we will reduce one problem to the other problems. We will develop a new class. But we have to start somewhere. And that starting problem was this satisfiability problem. So what is the satisfiability problem? Satisfiability problem, it deals with a Boolean formula. What is a Boolean formula? So a Boolean formula phi consists of variables. So these variables are the Boolean variables. It can take only 0 and 1 value, true or false basically. So it has variables x1, x2. Don't get confused with these x's. These are not strings. These are only just variables for Boolean formula. Then operators. What are the operators? Or, and, not, implication, by implication. So these are the operators. Or, not, or, and, not, implication, by implication. And there are some parentheses, of course. So let me take a Boolean formula first, then I'll tell you. So here is a Boolean formula. x1 implies x2 if and only if x2 or not x1. This is a Boolean formula. Now these variables x1, x2 can take values 0 or 1 or true or false basically. Now for some assignment of x1, x2, some assignment like 0 or 1, either this formula will evaluate to true or it will evaluate to false. So for a particular assignment, it will have one value. For another assignment, it may have another value. So with that, we say a truth assignment the name says it, a truth assignment is a set of Boolean values for xi and it is satisfying if the formula evaluates to 1. So a truth assignment to this formula is a set of values for its variable for which this formula will evaluate to true. That's the truth assignment, because there can be many assignments to these variables. So for example, for this particular formula, so let me take this x1, x2, implication x2 or not of x1. Suppose I take both x1 and x2 assignment 1 and 1. So if you put 1 and 1, this is true, then this becomes 1 or 0. So this gives you 1, this gives you 1, and this evaluates to 1. Because 1, if 1, this by implication is right. So this entire formula evaluates to 1. So this x1 is equal to 1, x2 is equal to 1. This is one truth assignment for this formula. Now, we say a formula is satisfiable if there exists a truth assignment a satisfying truth assignment. I have already defined what is satisfying. So a formula basically is a satisfiable formula if there exists an assignment which can satisfy it. Like this formula is a satisfiable formula because there exists one assignment for which it evaluates to true. So now the problem is the decision problem is this. Given a Boolean formula, is it satisfiable? That's the problem. Given the formula, can you determine whether it is satisfiable or not? That is the problem. And this turns out to be a very generic or very general problem. Okay, so let me first define the language then. What is the language? I call it as SAT. SAT is the language name. It consists of encoding of all formula phi such that phi, can you complete the sentence? Phi is satisfiable. So SAT consists of all this language, all these strings. So we are asking whether SAT, what is the class of SAT? First of all, let us see whether SAT can be in NP or not. Whether SAT is in NP. So how do you claim whether SAT is in NP? Given a truth assignment, whether you can verify the formula, it is actually satisfying or not. Can't you do it in polynomial time? Obviously you can do it. You just plug those values, given the certificate is basically an assignment here. So you plug those values for these variables and just see whether they turn out to be 1. And that can be done in polynomial time in terms of the number of variables, number of operators. So this problem is in NP, is in the class of NP. Now what can be shown is the following. I will not show it in this class, but it has been shown by somebody. Actually, it's called the Cook's theorem. Cook is the person who showed that all problems in NP can be reduced to the problem of SAT. This is not a very easy task. You should think about it. He has proved that all problems in NP, it's a general problem in NP. That's an infinite class, first of all. He has proved that any problem you take in the class NP can be reduced in polynomial time to this problem is SAT. So this is the seed point. From this point onwards, we will see how all the other problems can. Now what we will do? We know at least there exists one problem where everything else can be reduced to that problem. So now if I can show that this particular problem can be reduced to any other problem, we have solved this basic question, whether all problems can be reduced to a particular problem. So this will be our goal now. So now we know that all problems in NP can be reduced to polynomial time, polynomially reduced. Polynomial time reducible to SAT. This we know. This is called the Cook's theorem. It is not a very easy task to show this. Okay, now I'll tell you why this is so important for us. What we'll do now, we'll take a problem P, any problem, not P. Let us say any problem, say L. Now if we can show that SAT is polynomial time reducible to L, what we have shown now? All problems in NP also reducible to L in polynomial time. Now our task of showing all the problems reducible to L is just to show that SAT is reducible to L. Our task has become easier now because somebody else has shown has taken that harder part, has shown this thing. So this will be our next topic: how to show that some the SAT problem or some known problems to which all the problems of NP are all reducible can be reduced to a given problem.